We're joined now by CNN Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr and retired Admiral John Kirby, who was a spokesman for both the Pentagon and the State Department during the Obama administration. And Barbara, this trip comes to Iraq just days after the president announced a complete withdrawal of troops from Syria. What more are you learning about this decision and what the president is saying today? What's your response to that?
Well, the president had a very interesting wrinkle on all of this, Jim. He suddenly said that, ISIS is not so dominant anymore. Didn't say specifically defeated, as he'd previously said, not so dominant, and suggested that if ISIS comes back in Syria, the U.S. will be able to conduct operations against them in Syria from positions inside Iraq. That may be militarily very difficult. If you're going to conduct airstrikes, if you're going to do ground operations, you have to have very specific, detailed intelligence from the ground. And if U.S. ground troops are not in Syria, that may be very tough to come by, just as Russian, Syrian, Iranian-backed militias, ISIS, are all on the move inside Syria. Everybody is maneuvering. Everybody plans to take ground as the U.S. withdraws, Jim.
And John, the president said today that ISIS was basically defeated. He said they had been knocked out, knocked silly, and so on. But he also wants to use Iraq as a base to launch attacks in Syria. How practical is that? What do you make of the president saying that? It sounds as though he's keeping a reserve plan in place in case they hadn't been defeated.
Right. It's kind of going against what he said before. And we know that they're not defeated, Jim. I mean, there's no argument about that. He seems to be the only one to think that they're completely gone out of Syria. But go back to 2014, 2015, that's exactly what we were doing. We were based in Iraq and we were launching strikes into Syria. Barr brings up a very good point. That gets harder to do, particularly now that ISIS has gone more to ground in Iraq and Syria. The targets are more dynamic, fleeting, more fast, and there's fewer of them. So that's why the boots on the ground and getting the geolocation and the intel on the ground makes the targeting much more effective. It was one thing to go after ISIS targets in 2014 and 2015 when there were more of them, when they were more overt, when they had infrastructure to hit. That's not the case now. Now's the time to press the advantage, and it's the worst time to take the troops out.
And Barbara, we saw the president signing a campaign hat, a red hat, his Make America Great Again hat. Is that unusual to see the president doing that on base? Does this run the risk of the president, facing some accusations that he's turning some of this into a campaign stop? What do you think?
Well, this is very interesting. The pool reporters traveling said that the troops brought the hats with them, including one hat that said Trump 2020. We will have to see if that actually proves to be the case. The question is, if they brought them or if the president brought them, what commander allowed that to really happen? Because this is very much against military policy and regulation. Troops are not supposed to be involved in political activities. The U.S. military is not a political force. And there's no question the saying Trump 2020 and Make America Great Again, those are political slogans of a Trump campaign. They are not governmental sayings, to say the least.
Right. And John, I mean, what would the concern be if something like that is going on, do you think? Or is this just, a soldier is there, he's got a hat in his locker, and he runs over and says, hey, when am I going to have another chance for the president to sign one of these things? Yeah,
look, I mean, it kind of blurs the line because the Trump is his slogan, and where's that line? But Barb's right, it is in fact a campaign slogan. That is a campaign item, and it's completely inappropriate for the troops to do this.
Not supposed to do it.
Not supposed to do this, and I'm sure that their bosses seeing that, they're not going to be happy about it. But look, the president has to take some ownership of this too. Every time he's around military audiences, he tends to politicize it, and he brings in complaints and grievances from outside the realm of military policy. This was wrong for him to do it as well. I'm going to be really interested to see, Jim, when we get video of his comments to the troops, his actual speech, al-Assad, and I hope that he didn't politicize those sets of remarks, but we'll have to wait and see.
And Barb, speaking of what the president said over there, the president said today that he's not in any rush to fill the job of defense secretary. The position that Mattis resigned, and I guess he'll be vacating sooner than expected. Does the Deputy Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan have the experience to lead the military for the foreseeable future, if that's what the president is planning?
Well, if that's what he's planning, that's what it's going to be. Shanahan is a longtime Boeing executive. He has a lot of experience in large organizations, in corporate matters, large budgets, acquisition, innovation, all the issues that he's been dealing with as Deputy Defense Secretary. As he takes on acting secretary, what officials are saying is he will have to rely more on the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joe Dunford, the vice chairman, General Paul Selva. He will have to rely on military advice as he forms any recommendations for the president. Remember, Mattis had been in the Marine Corps for decades and had been in the most senior command positions. So Secretary Mattis had a lot of military operational experience himself. He didn't need to rely on the uniforms quite as much. This will be a much more traditional construct, I think, where the acting Secretary of Defense will likely turn to the military to get their views, their advice as he forms any recommendations for President Trump.
Okay, Barbara Starr and John Kirby, thank you very much.